So this is a little video to refresh you guys on what we learned at the intensive training week. I'd like you to meet Lyra. She is a 20-year-old Icelandic mare. Very sweet, very loving, and does love this work. The first thing we talked about were the roundhouses. The head, the whole joint of the head and the TMJ, the roundhouse of the shoulder, and the roundhouse of the hips. And we talked about how the fascia runs in movement trains, in lines. So the nuchal ligament fascia begins at the forehead, comes up, forms, there's a funicular cord that runs at the top of the neck, and the fascial bands of the nuchal ligament come down and insert into the spine, and then the nuchal ligament becomes the thoracic lumbar ligament. The funicular cord follows all the way down to the tail, and the thoracic lumbar fascia becomes this giant band that comes over and becomes the gluteal fascial and the fascia lata. And all of this fascia is connected and has movement trains. So the movement train that begins up here in the head transfers across the body to the opposite shoulder, comes around, spiraling around to the opposite hip. And you can think of the whole horse's movement as a giant spiral, like a crank wheel. And so as the horse is moving, they're moving in a spiral-like fashion. And as you're riding, you can feel that spiral-like fashion happening in your hips as you're following along. We talked about that sort of. I talked about a little bit of it. The next thing we talked about was getting a feel. And the feel is that your body is exactly the same as the horse. You've got all this fascia, you've got all this connective tissue. It's innervated, it's filled with synovial fluid, it's filled with water that's the same salinity as the ocean. It's got electrical charge running through it. It is a communication system. And when you put your hands onto your horse, that communication system in your fascia connects to the communication system in their fascia, and you'll begin to get an energetic flow between your hands that gets the horse to start releasing. And there's her lick chew. You want to see, can you see that lick chew there, Tara?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there we go. So she gave her first release with just that. Okay, we're back. The TMJ. The first thing we want to do is activate the mouth to get the tongue licking and chewing and get the horse swallowing. So we talked about sticking your thumb into the cheek or your finger into the cheek and bothering the horse's mouth until they lick and chew. This horse is not easily bothered, apparently. Well, did we get a lick and chew? And did we get a swallow? Yes. Now I'm going to do the second way, which is to put your hand in the mouth and press the tongue until the horse swallows. There we go. Good girl. That's the way you do it when you've got a bit. Now we're going to go up to the TMJ joint itself. And Tara, you're going to want to zoom into this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the skull bone, the bone right above the eye. This is the mandible, the jawbone, and they come up and there's a soft tissue bridge, her temple, in between. That temple is where you want to put some extraordinarily light touch and see if there's anything that needs releasing. Now, she's a good subject. She's probably not very stiff because we don't ask that much of our horses. No, we don't, do we? These are trail horses. So I didn't get any reactivity there. Now I'm going to put my hand over the whole joint And the reactivity we're getting is from the gentleman coming from behind to see what kind of a nuisance he can make. He actually wants this. He loves this. We may change horses. I'll show you that. I'm going to go through it on her, but I'm going to show you this again on another horse that might give more response to it. The full forehead area is yummy, yummy, yummy. They love it when you put your hand onto the forehead and you squeeze the forelock a little bit and you rock it back and forth. Let's see whether she's reacting to Yark behind her or to my hand. It's Yark. She's very, very, very unstiff. Her mom does not put her into postures that create any resistance or any restriction. So she's very, very, very released. She is ridden as a trail horse without much being asked of her except to be a nice horse. We talked about head shake, where you put a hand under the jaw and a hand on the nose and you wobble the head around. Now this, we're getting something, because this is activating the pole, C1, and the skull, and she does have a history of a stiff pole. She also loves a move that I did not get a chance to show you guys, but she loves it so much. It's called head up, and it's her absolute favorite thing. She's a little worried about Yark behind her because he's El Bosso, and he's just wandering loose. There she goes. My hands are on the junction of the skull and C1 right here behind the ear and on the top of the head. And I'm just asking for her to release. Each of those little stresses is a level of release that she's fighting back against, and then she goes deeper. This mare has fallen asleep on my shoulder in the past. I've got a little bit of a trembling above C1, C2, right there, a little bit of a trembling as she lets that go. That's a little harder for her. Historically, this has been very hard for her. When she came to me a long time ago, her skull, her pole, her neck were completely whacked. And it took quite a lot of work to get them to go. There's the trembling, the pulsing. She's doing her best. I'm going to stay with it. Stay with it, girly girl. There, see her eye blinking? I'm not doing anything except just asking her to release those joints. Okay, now she's going to give a little lick chew, a sigh. She's a gentle thing, isn't she? Yeah. Cervical lateral flexion. We find the bones of the neck. This is the C1, big flat bone, C2, and you can follow the bony process down by following the bulge of the neck, where it inserts in front of the scapula, and then the spine continues from there. About like in here. There you go. In cervical lateral flexion, we're going to hold the nose of the horse. Are you getting jealous, Yark? I believe you're getting jelly. Do not open that gate. I will work on you, I promise. And I'm going to bend her neck around to me, and I'm going to use my fingers to ask the joints underneath me to let go. So, let go right here. See the wiggle? Let go coming on down here. Let go here. Let go here. And as I get down to the junction of the neck and the shoulder, I'm going to let my arm drop onto the whole tissue. This is her reactive. This is her saying, oh, there's stuff here. And I'm just going to let my hand sink in gently, a little wiggle, a little rocking, and I'm going to feel around with my hand, my arm, my elbow, and see if there's any place that needs releasing. The center of this joint, right about where my forearm is, right where my elbow is, right there, is over the brachial complex. It's the most amazing point on the horse because it releases endorphins. It's also a point where if you get a lot of reaction and your horse is turning around to bite and chew and get upset, soften up, because it's a giant nerve bundle down there and you don't want to be sending electrical jolts down your horse's legs. She's not giving us any of that. So I'm going to now lean back. I told you this at the end of your lesson. Lean back and ask for that give. And let's see what we get, as Jim would say. What do you have to say about that, as Jim would say? Nothing. She's actually releasing, but Icelandics can be stoic. The shoulder. I showed you the foot jiggle, 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 jiggle. Notice my hand is over her fetlock. There is a fetlock there. This is what her fur is like if we don't clip. We wobble, wobble so that the foot is floppy, floppy. Change hands. Your other hand comes around the elbow. And I'm going to bring her down and back. Yeah. This is hard for her. She's got incredibly narrow pectoral. Her chest is narrow. She's narrow-based. And this move has always been really hard for her. See, she just can't even hold it. But that's not because she's so restricted. It's because of her conformation. She's like a board. She's like a carousel horse built out of one chunk of log. Good girl. But see how she liked that. So I'm going to do it again because this is also, because it's her structural weakness, it's also good to do some more releasing and stretching on it. I'm going to come out there. I'm going to hold it this time. I'm going to come forward. Hold it. Okay, you get the idea. The movement is around an arc, about like that, something like that. Your horses can do this. Whammo, because of all that Spanish walk you guys do. The shoulder. This is her shoulder blade. I know she's so small. I'm going to put one hand on the trapezius in front and one hand on the trapezius in back. It's a double muscle. And there, she loves this. Look at that. We get the lick chew with this right away. And I'm passing the ocean back and forth between my hands. And I'm at Hapuna Beach, ignoring the surfers, feeling those gentle waves coming through my right hand, into my left hand, and back out through my right hand again. She's loving this. Oh, yeah. There's a thing I did not tell you guys, but I'll tell you now. Just as the brachial complex, which is right here, is a big deal, that bulge that is right underneath our knee roll is a big deal. This spot, right there, where it's like the love handle on your horse, right there. That is a layer of fascia that connects the front fascia to the belly fascia to the back fascia. The whole joint is a roundhouse, but this is the keyhole for it. This is the magic place. If you've got a horse with a sore back, you put one hand there, you come along and you ask, where is it sore, and hers is not, so we're not going to get an answer to that. But let's just say if she was sore in the lumbar. You then pass that power, pass that energy back and forth between your hands, and you're going to get release. So remember, this is a magic spot to hang on to for anything that's going on in the thoracic cavity, in the whole back, belly. You've got a colic, you can come down here and come to that, you can help release colic. This is a magic spot for the entire fascia complex of the horse. We talked about the pectorals, and let's turn her so you can see them. Is that going to work for us, Carl?
Yeah.
So the sternum is the bony part, and you put your hand on it, and your other hand comes up on the withers, and you do a wither rock, which is self-evident. You just rock the withers back and forth really gently, and you try to follow where you think the rib that you're touching might connect into the sternum, because that's the whole thing about the sternum. It's the tips of the ribs coming together in a cartilage material. If her shoulders were impinged, if her withers were impinged, if her chest was hurting, we'd be hearing about it right now from her. I know, I'm using a horse who isn't messed up. But you could still see the moves. If your horse is all spasmy in the pectorals, which sometimes she gets because she's narrow-based, and if she's going to get exhausted, she gets exhausted in her pecs. You just love on that pec. You put your hand and you cup it, and then you put your hand up on the top wherever it seems like it's going to work, and you send loving in until the spasm quits. And this is, horses they just love this. If your horse is chomping at your hand because you're going onto the chest, you have got a spasm in that area. You do. You all might have a habit, but you've also got a pain. So just do something to get the head not on your hand and help that horse through it. Okay. We talked about the rump. Would you like to show the other side of your rump? Oh, isn't she a good girl? Isn't she a good girl? Yes, she's going to borrow her sister's hay. You're not that good. Hey, sugar girl, I'm going to tie you back up so we can have your rump. Yes, a good girl. Yes, you are. Step over. Over. Step, step, step. Puss. One more. One more. Square up, thank you. You've got bony structures of the pelvis that we use as landmarks and handholds. The first is this bony structure that sticks out, which is the same as our point of our hip right here, our hip bone. The second is where the femur inserts into the pelvis. The femur comes up from the stifle and inserts into the pelvis at the big round lumpy area. You could put the hands on each of those and send the energy back and forth through. She doesn't have a lot to say about this, but we are getting a gas release. And she does like it. I can feel it as I stay on it. Look at that, you guys. Right before she sighed, I felt it. Stay on these things and learn what that just was with your horse, where your hands feel it and then the horse does it. The next bony point we talked about was the ischia, which is the big bony structure that sticks out from the back of the pelvis. And it is the same as our what we sit on when we're on a bike saddle. And you can connect, it's easier to connect this bone and the backbone. And I like to put a little wobble in, just see if that pelvis is going to move. Now you might notice Yark over there releasing. Can you see him in the video?
No, he's behind.
Well, horses will release with each other. These horses are one being. And as Lyra's getting released, Yark is too. Now you can see how she's dropping that leg as I just do this gentle rocking on her pelvis. When you have done enough on your horses so that they are released enough so that you can just do this and they do that, you know you're getting somewhere. And it's not as though this girl doesn't work. I mean, she doesn't do dressage, but she goes out and she does trail, she climbs mountains, she rides hard, she carries weight, she carries a Western saddle. She does her job. She's not unfit. But she is soft. And it's all because of the massage work that she's been getting. Not all the time, but regularly for about 8 years. She loves this so much. It's hard to stop. Look at those deep, blinking eyes. Yes, she is falling asleep. Are you asleep? Lyra! Lyra! The whole gluteus complex. You can run your finger. That is awesome. Did you see that? This is what happens when you're releasing the rear end. They'll pick their leg up. They'll do that. They're like, I can move that. Look at me. That's what that is. They're not trying to kick you. It's like, oh, yeah. They're like releasing themselves. This is big for her. I'm going down the bladder meridian, which I forgot to tell you about, is 2 inches down or 1 inch, 2 fingers down, that far down from the main. Just use your whole hand so you don't have to worry about precisely where it is. And off the top line, just use your whole hand. You don't have to worry about where it is. It's a magic, oh yeah. And when you get onto an area of the horse that's restricted, they go. So I'm up on the bladder meridian on the butt. And now I'm going to do a move I did not tell you guys about, which they love. And I'm right next to the dock. And I'm just going to rock this horse back and forth ever so gently, lifting the skin to do it. They love that. You know they do. They come up to you and they ask for it, but just do it real gently. And you'll be releasing the big fat gluteus muscles. You're releasing the glide between them when you do this. We talked about synovial fluid and how when you put pressure onto fascia, when you stretch fascia or you push on fascia or you activate it, there are cells in the fascia which produce synovial fluid. So you can give your horse all the hyaluronic acid and synovial fluid you want, but you can have them produce it on their own by doing this work with them. Do you remember me talking about this circle here and the fascia lata? That's what that's actually called. I call it the fascia latte because it reminds me of Starbucks. It's a muscle, but it's basically a fascia muscle. It's so big. And the way that it layers, it sends a communication, bang, boom, 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 into the medial muscles, into the muscles on the inside of the leg, and they communicate up through the abdomen into the psoas, and that connects into the diaphragm. And so one way to get a diaphragm release on a horse is to come into the fascia lata, and then with a fist, your other hand coming along the hip on the top. I showed you in class here because it was the simplest to explain to you, but now that I'm being long form, anywhere on the top that horse likes it, and you're going to get deep, deep release. She has to start wobbling because it's so deep. She's going to have to shift onto the other leg. And then you come up onto that lumbar, And that's where it gets super deep. And you are releasing the area of your horse that you have strengthened like no tomorrow, your lumbar region. When we're collecting that horse up and we're lifting that horse's back, that lumbar becomes like jungle gym hard and strong. And it really, really likes this. She likes it too. Lumbar has always been an issue for her. If there's one thing that's an issue for her, it's lumbar, and the other thing is pull. For her, the lumbar is an issue because she's such a little girl. Yeah, you're a little girl. And I'm massaging a little bit into the lumbar because she tells me she likes it. Okay. So all of this is excellent. I am not going to quit until I know that she's happiest. I mean, this is just amazingly good. Look at that. Look at her head going. These are big, deep releases. And I am not pushing hard, you guys. I am not pushing hard. She feels like she needs to hold herself up because she's going to fall down because she's releasing so much. She doesn't know where her legs are anymore. So she went over to the stall wall to sort of brace herself so she wouldn't fall over. And remember, I told you that I had a horse fall over on me once with this. So if she needs to figure out how to hold herself up, that's okay. All right. So again, come here, sweetheart. Depress the tongue. Slide the jaw back and forth. Get yourself a little TMJ release. Her TMJ is not messed up. It just doesn't need releasing. She's like clean, clean, clean. Forehead. Cervical lateral flexion. She does get stiff here, C1, C2. It's a big problem for her. Now, after doing that butt release, see, look at this odd angle on her head. I'm going to help her. I'm supporting her head with her halter because it's a little bit difficult for her, so I'm helping her. And she's also tiny, you know. And we've been through this before. She likes this. Okay, I'm coming down the cervical lateral flexion. Look at how she's bracing against it, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to keep asking for it. Coming around. There we go. There it goes. And you may say, why don't we come to the other side? She seems like that would be better, and you're totally right. Cervical lateral flexion. I'm asking with the nose. This time I'm pushing back just a little bit with my left hand onto her joint to see if I can get some mobility between C1 and C2. I'm asking the question, hey joint, if I put a little pressure on you, can you let go and loosen up? There it is. She says, I'm a little bit concerned about that. And the restriction is right behind the ear. It's right there. So I'm going to see. I'm going to come into it. See. You guys will learn all of this. You'll do all of this. Just play with it. Start super soft. Allow yourself to go deeper. Follow the horse. Let the horse tell you. They will teach you what they need if you just listen.